Maximizing Me 2.0, the power of networking. Welcome to the course. My name is Shayo Imolugume, and I am a management consultant, business growth strategist, trainer, and speaker. If you'd like to know more about me, my services, courses, and content, please follow me on my social media handles at Shayo Imolugume on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Now, before we start, it's important that we realize that this is a course. And if we're going to get the best out of it, we need to approach it as a course. And so I encourage us to set out time to attend the course. There are about 8 modules in this course. And so you really need to set out time to really go through the videos and get a full grasp and understanding of the discussions. Find a quiet place in your home or office away from unnecessary distractions, and have a notebook and pen handy to answer the exercises in the course and also to jot down notes. Remember also to switch off mobile phones, or at least put them on airplane mode to avoid unnecessary distractions. And like I always say, there was life before we had mobile phones. So if you don't look at your phone for the next 30 minutes, I don't believe there will be any crisis. Okay, so this is the discussion about business networking. Why do we want to network? Well, we must realize that people are our most valued assets. We really can't achieve much if we don't have people to support us. And that's what this discussion will look at. So what's the purpose of the course? The course is designed to highlight the importance of business and social networking, as well as offer you basic guidelines and tips on how to meet people, manage contacts, and build relationships for business and career success. So first and foremost, we'll go into a brief introduction to the course. I'm going to start with a quote, and it says, "Surround yourself with remarkable humans. They will be the anchor that grounds you and the wings that lift you to the stars." And another quote from the Bible this time says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken." We can find that in the book of Ecclesiastes 4, from verses 9 to 12. So, I'm sure we've all networked with other people at one point in time or the other. But sometimes we're not just conscious or deliberate about it. So we have conversations with people when we meet them, at meetings, social engagements, people in your office, your colleagues, your neighbors. We've all had interactions with them. The difference is that we do not purposefully or intentionally network. We just have these pleasant discussions with them and we leave it at that. This course will help us put a structure around our networking activities. Now, there are some points I'd like us to note. The first point, if you meet someone for the first time, what lasting impression do you want to leave the person with? And I'm going to repeat that. If you meet somebody for the first time, how do you want that person to remember you? You know the saying that goes, there's never a second opportunity to make a first impression. So that very first impression, what do you want that impression to be when you meet someone? Think about that. The second point I want us to note is effective networking is more about building long-term lasting relationships and not just about making, short-term acquaintances. Now, yes, you are going to have some short-term acquaintances, but effective business networking is more about building the long-term relationship. Now, this picture on the right is quite dynamic. If those of us that are old enough to remember the epic musical back in the day, 1965, The Sound of Music, it was a beautiful movie. And those of us that remember, we remember Julie Andrews and remember the Von Trapp family. Well, you can see in the top left, in the top right-hand corner, the top part of the picture, those are the actors back in 1965. And then 45 years later, on the Oprah Winfrey Show, she was able to bring all the actors back together again. And there they are at the bottom of the picture, 45 years later. And, to the glory of God, they were all alive to celebrate it. Now, that is an epic picture. What does it tell us? It tells us that within the space of 45 years, somehow they have been able to connect with these people. The question for you and I is that in our past, we've had connections in our past, our primary school, our secondary school, our university days, our early career days. How many of these people do we remember? How many of these people are we still in contact with? Have we been able to sustain relationships long term? So these are some of the questions we need to ask ourselves, because your childhood friends, people that you have, they're usually very valuable to you. Why? Because they knew you when you were nothing, when you were still starting, when you had not gotten a big name for yourself. These are the people that spent quality time with you, and they understand and they know the real you, not the polished you, not the finished you, not the supersonic you. They are the people that know the real you. And so if you're able to maintain relationships from when you were not as popular or as famous or as successful as you are today, such relationships are quite valuable. So going back to my point, I said effective networking is a long-term investment. So we shouldn't always expect quick returns. Networking is not just about who you know. It's more about who knows you. So yes, we know quite a lot of people. I'm sure you've got neighbors, you've got colleagues in the office, you've got church members, you've got people from your trade associations, your professional associations, and other groups and like that. But networking is not just about who you know. It's more about who knows you. So now let's take an example. So maybe the managing director of a popular bank lives in your neighborhood. Now, he lives in your neighborhood. Probably you might have met him once or twice. You know his house, you know where he lives, you know where he works. Probably during your neighborhood meetings, you might have said hello to him and he might have politely responded and smiled at you. But that's it. So would you say, so you know him? Fine, but you're knowing him. What has that done for you? What you need to do is move it from you knowing him to him knowing you. So you know him, you know his name, you know his house, you know he works where he works. But does he know you? As in, does he really know your name? Can he put a face to your name? If somebody else says, oh, I know Lady Shire, can he put a face to your name? Does he know the house, your house number? Because you live in the same neighborhood. If you were to run into him in a different location outside your neighborhood, would he remember where he met you? Or would he remember who you are? Now, if he's able to remember who you are, then you've actually made a connection. And you can take that connection further. But if he's not, and you have to start reminding him, oh, it's me, I live in your neighborhood. And then he smiles and says, okay, yes. He probably doesn't really remember who you are. He's just being polite and saying yes. He probably doesn't have a clue to who you are. So what we're doing in this course is learning how to turn those connections to the point where they now know you. They know where you live. They know who you are. They know what you can do, what you're capable of, what you stand for, what your values are. And it's when they understand you, that's when they can help you. So networking is not just about who you know, It's more about who knows you. And the last point I want us to, keep at the back of our mind. You should always start with lending your heart before you ask for a hand. Make that emotional connection before you ask for help. And so now we're going to go and look at the agenda, what the things that we're going to discuss in the course. Like I said, there are about 8 modules. So the first one is what networking is. What really is networking? What is the definition of networking? What do we mean by networking? And we're going to ask ourselves why networking is important. Then we will move on to how to network. What are the do's and don'ts? What steps do we need to take to effectively network? And we're going to later sound a word of caution. What are the preventive measures we should take when we are networking with people? We're going to look at the common mistakes that people make in networking. And then the networking tips. There are other tips that we need to consider. And finally, we're going to look at connecting on social media. And the last module will be after the meeting, what's next? And so I've come to the end of the introduction, and our next video will be answering the question, what networking is.